reports from the world's second largest continent. Hello, I'm Alison LaGrange. A very warm welcome from Durban, South Africa. We get you the news and the newsmakers from Africa. From elections to climate change to innovations and opportunities. As the world's attention shifts, we report from Africa, the heart of the global south. Join me every weekday live on First Post. Hello and welcome to First Post Africa, where we get you the top stories from the continent and from across the world. I'm Alison LaGrange, coming to you live from Durban, South Africa. First, let's take a look at the headlines. US President Donald Trump meets King Charles at Windsor Castle for a day of royal festivities, featuring the largest military contingent for a visiting foreign leader in living memory. The European Union proposes curbing trade with Israel and sanctioning ministers in its strongest move yet over the Gaza war, pressing Israel to end its offensive. China lodges complaint over the harassment of its citizens at New Zealand airports, including electronic devices being seized, while Wellington says all arrivals must comply with national and border security rules. Indonesia's Constitutional Court upholds revisions to the military law allowing a greater armed forces role in civilian affairs, one of the issues fueling widespread anti-government protests. And gold worth over $700,000 is stolen as thieves break into the Natural History Museum in Paris, the latest in a worrying series of robberies from cultural institutions. Hello and welcome. Let's start with Senegal. Authorities have intercepted over 100 migrants who were attempting to reach Europe via the dangerous Atlantic route. The migrants were aboard a long wooden fishing boat with no engine. Authorities intercepted them off the coast of Dakar. Now, reportedly, it was a group of young men from neighbouring Gambia, and they had been at sea for 5 days.
A canoe was found at sea without an engine. We don't know the cause yet. The police are investigating. There were about 112 people on board, mostly foreigners. We don't know at this time where the canoe came from. What we can say is that the Wakam fishermen lent them an engine to allow them to reach the Wakam fishing dock. It's thanks to this engine that they arrived in Wakam.
Au niveau de Wakam, les pêcheurs de Wakam leur ont prêté un moteur.
Every year, tens of thousands of migrants brave the Atlantic Ocean to reach Europe in search of safety and a better life. Now, factors driving this migration is economic hardship, political instability, and climate change impacts on traditional livelihoods. These migrants attempt to cross the Atlantic Ocean in poorly equipped fishing boats. They face unquenchable thirst, seasickness, and bone-chilling cold. These boats are overcrowded and the engines can easily break down, leaving passengers drifting for days without sufficient food or fresh water. Some vessels sink or never make it ashore. Now, earlier this month, at least 7 migrants were found dead on 2 beaches in southern Spain after their boat sank. Reportedly, they had departed from Algeria. Spain is one of the 3 main entry points for irregular migrants heading for Europe. The other 2 are Italy and Greece. Now, according to Spain's Interior Ministry, over 20,000 people arrived in Spain by sea between January and August. This includes over 4,700 arrivals on the mainland. and nearly 360 boats reached the mainland between January and August. Reportedly, thousands of migrants have died in recent years while attempting the Atlantic crossing from Africa, mainly towards Spain's Canary Islands. Now, just today, Spanish police have arrested 19 people accused of murder and torture aboard a migrant boat heading from Senegal to the Canary Islands. The wooden vessel was rescued adrift south of Gran Canaria in the Atlantic last month. It had nearly 250 survivors on board. Authorities believe that the boat originally carried around 300 people, and many of the missing might have been thrown overboard. Though the actual death toll on the Atlantic route is unclear, the International Organization for Migration recorded over 1,000 deaths and disappearances last year. The actual toll might be much higher. To stop these migrants from reaching Europe, countries like Spain have outsourced their immigration management to African countries. But such setups have often come under fire for reported migrant abuses. A recent report has accused Mauritanian security forces of committing serious human rights violations against migrants and asylum seekers over the past 5 years. Now, reportedly, the victims were largely West and Central Africans who were seeking to leave or transit the country. Both EU and Mauritania have denied these allegations. Now, despite the dangers, several migrants continue to take on the perilous journey, even when the chances of them succeeding are slim. Now, for more on this, we have with us Lauren B. Landau, a senior researcher at the African Centre for Migration and Society at the University of the Witwatersrand, who is joining us live from Oxford, UK. Welcome to Firstpost Africa.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Now, what factors are driving the surge in irregular migration from West Africa to Europe, particularly along the dangerous Atlantic route to the Canary Islands?
We've seen this route being used in the past. It gave way in 2015 and later to people trying to cross the Mediterranean. But now we're seeing such an elaborate set of mechanisms in place along the North African coast and across the sea that makes it harder and harder to cross that route. So people have reverted to going through the Atlantic. Of course, if you're coming from Senegal, you're coming from Gambia, it's much easier to leave from there rather than cross the land and get to North Africa. But the risks, as we've seen from your reporting, are much higher.
And how are the Senegalese and regional authorities balancing security enforcement with humanitarian responsibilities when they are intercepting such large groups of migrants at sea?
Right. Of course, everybody has a right in law to leave a country. It is if you're not a criminal, you can leave. That is a human right. And so what Senegal is doing is trying to rescue these people. They shouldn't be trying to stop them from leaving. That is somebody else's responsibility. But African states are being asked to do this. They're being paid to do this by Europeans who want to keep Africans within Africa. Is this a security risk? As you said, some of these people might be criminals, but it's usually the people running the boats. It's usually the people exploiting the migrants who are the criminals, not the people on the boats themselves, who for the most part, not 100%, but for the most part, are simply people looking to build a better life somewhere else.
Absolutely. Now, despite these dangers, African migrants continue to take such perilous routes to flee to Europe. What long-term strategies should West African governments and European partners adopt to address the root causes of this migration?
I think there's two things to keep in mind here. One is that Europe needs migrants. The changing demography of Europe means that there needs labor, and that labor has to come from somewhere. So what we should be doing is thinking about a pragmatic approach, which says, what does Europe need and what does Africa need? We're not going to change the need to move. We're not going to equalize and make it possible for Africans to stay 100% in Africa. They need a life somewhere else. They deserve a life somewhere else. So rather than trying to create systems that keep people in Africa, we should be thinking about how do we facilitate moves? How do we facilitate moves that are safe in ways that can benefit Africans, but also can help Europe to meet its labor needs in the decades ahead?
Absolutely. Lauren, thank you very much for being with us on the show.
It's a pleasure.
And staying on with West Africa, Nigeria has charged a former presidential candidate over his posts against President Bola Tinubu on social media. Omoyele Sowore, an activist and publisher, is accused of posting false messages online in a bid to cause a breakdown of law and order. Now, he was a minor candidate in the 2023 election that was won by Tinubu, and also unsuccessfully ran in the 2019 election. In a series of recent posts, he accused President Tinubu of corruption and called him a criminal. He targeted Tinubu's remarks during a visit to Brazil, where the president declared Nigeria corruption-free. Sowore is now facing 5 counts of cybercrime, but it's not just him. Nigeria has also taken social media platforms X and Meta to court over the posts, though it is not clear what charges the platforms face. Nigeria's Department of State Services claims these statements were false, malicious, and aimed at inciting public disorder. It also alleges that Sowore acted with the intent to create fear and disturbance by circulating the information online. The Federal Republic of Nigeria is listed as the complainant, while Sowore, X Incorporated, and Meta Incorporated are named as defendants. Sowore is not the only one to accuse the president of corruption. Last year, the Organized Crime and Corruption Reporting Project named Tinubu the 3rd most corrupt leader in the world. Now, Tinubu's presidency has been dogged by questions over his wealth, which critics argue remains unexplained. In 2023, it emerged that his son owned a $10.8 million London mansion, a property previously linked to a Nigerian businessman who allegedly acquired it with crime proceeds. Similar luxury properties in the United Kingdom have also been linked to the Tinubu family. Now, earlier this year, a U.S. District Court ordered law enforcement agencies to release confidential information on President Bola Tinubu, generated during a purported federal investigation in the 1990s. Investigators said the funds in his accounts were suspected to be connected to drug trafficking and money laundering networks. Now, other lawsuits have also surfaced, including claims of fraud, tax evasion and money laundering involving a consulting firm known as Alpha Beta. Now, last year, several young Nigerians protested against corruption and government policies. They demonstrated over economic hardship, high inflation, the removal of fuel subsidies, and rising costs of living, demanding accountability and relief. Millions continue to live in poverty in the oil-rich Nigeria, where successive governments have long been implicated in corruption scandals and accused of squandering the nation's wealth. Meanwhile, rights groups also regularly accuse authorities of violating free speech in a country with a large and vocal media industry. And with this new wave of charges against his critics, including social media giants, the Tinubu administration now faces growing questions over how it handles dissent, even as corruption allegations continue to linger. And staying on with corruption in African countries, a UN report has accused South Sudan's leaders of systematic looting and plundering the country's wealth. Oil-rich South Sudan is one of the youngest and poorest nations in the world. It received independence from Sudan in 2011. Now, the report said that since independence, government officials have stolen public funds worth billions of dollars, and hardly any money reached essential services like health and education.
Currently, South Sudan ranks at the bottom of the Human Development Index. Its children face hunger and preventable death. Its schools and clinics are starved of funds, and its people are deprived of justice, opportunity, and dignity. And our report details how the plunder works and how it translates into suffering for ordinary South Sudanese.
The UN report stated that corruption was undermining the government's ability to meet its human rights targets, and it was directly fueling armed violence. Reportedly, nearly 2/3 of South Sudan's 12 million people are facing crisis levels of hunger or worse. The report accused the South Sudanese leaders of looting public funds and of outsourcing critical services like food and health to international donors.
The government continues to outsource human rights obligations to donors. Donors now fund more humanitarian relief and assistance than the government itself. And yet, as we know, donor support is decreasing, even as the needs rise. The potential consequences for South Sudanese is disastrous.
The report said that authorities used several schemes to divert public funds. One such scheme was the Oil for Roads program. It was supposed to be a flagship development scheme. Between 2021 and 2024, the program received $2.2 billion, of which $1.7 billion is unaccounted for, and 95% of the promised work was never done. The report said that the money was funneled to construction companies owned by the country's Vice President, Benjamin Bolmel. The 101-page report was released on Tuesday, just a day after Bolmel announced on X that he was promoted to the rank of general in the National Security Service. As per the report, an annual budget allocation to the President's medical unit exceeded health spending across the entire country.
In a country where those in desperate need of medical assistance can't access life-saving drugs, the Ministry of Health spent just $1,000 on pharmaceuticals last year. So the message is clear. The government has money for patronage. It does not seem to have money for the people.
The report also included a response from South Sudan's government. The government has accused the UN Commission of relying on unverified information for compiling the report. The UN report comes at a time when a political drama is unfolding in South Sudan. Just last week, President Kerr's longtime rival, Riek Machar, was charged with treason, murder, and crimes against humanity. He was also stripped of his position as the country's first vice president. Many of his allies have already been arrested, and this has angered Machar's party, who have now called for an armed mobilization to carry out a regime change. The clash between Kerr and Machar is intensifying, and this has threatened the 2018 peace deal, which brought an end to the 5-year-long civil war. Nearly 400,000 people were killed in the war, and a complete fallout between Kerr and Machar could potentially push the country back into it. The people of South Sudan are facing a humanitarian crisis, and rampant corruption has made matters worse. The growing rift between Kerr and Machar has put the country on a knife's edge. While fears of a renewed civil war fill the air, the people of South Sudan watch their future unfold with bated breath. And Africa is taking bold steps to claim its place in the global artificial intelligence revolution. Uganda is now preparing to host what organizers are calling Africa's first artificial intelligence factory, a strategic move to keep the continent's data and computing power at home. It is known as the Onion Project. It's a hyperscale renewable powered computing hub situated inside the 600 megawatt Karuma hydropower plant on the Nile. Now, the project is spearheaded by Uganda's Synthetics Technologies, which supports with support from global tech giant NVIDIA and a network of other partners. Now, the aim is to boost local innovation from healthcare to education while challenging Africa's reliance on foreign servers. The Aeonian project will use power from the hydro plant to run Africa's own AI systems, helping keep data on the continent and supporting AI development that is relevant to local needs. The first phase of the project is scheduled to be rolled out in the second half of next year. Key features of the project include a 100 megawatt sovereign supercomputer at its core. It is AI focused, enabling African researchers to train AI models in local languages using African data. It will support healthcare, life sciences, education, and research. Now then comes the green and tech design. The project uses river water for cooling recycled heat. It connects to a 2,500 kilometer fiber optic network that is linking Uganda with Kenya and Tanzania, providing global internet access. It will provide services like co-location, blockchain data storage, cloud services, and disaster recovery for other data centers. But the Onion project is not alone. Similar initiatives like Project Mufungi, led by Zimbabwe-based Cassava Technologies, are also partnering with NVIDIA to build AI factories across Africa. Cassava plans to invest $720 million and to expand to South Africa, Egypt, Kenya, Morocco, and Nigeria. Experts note that these African ambitions reflect a global trend. Nations outside North America and Europe are creating their own AI infrastructure to secure economic advantage, protect data sovereignty, and to capture value from AI technologies. In Asia, several countries have already built deep AI ecosystems anchored by domestic cloud providers, sovereign investment programs, and strong electronic supply chains. The Aeonian project signals that Africa is moving from data consumer to AI producer. The continent is now aiming to create digital intelligence locally, and Uganda is leading the way. By hosting the Aeonian project, it becomes one of the first African countries to deploy a sovereign supercomputer dedicated to AI, transforming the nation into a regional technology hub, building local skills, infrastructure, and innovation while working alongside global tech leaders. With the Aeonian project, Uganda is not just joining the AI race. It is helping to turn Africa into a producer of digital intelligence, building local skills and innovation while connecting the continent to the global tech ecosystem. And that's it on the show for today. We will see you again tomorrow at the same time. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.
It's over! He's done it again! Unbelievable! Oh, straight into the roof of the net. Nice one. Straight down the middle. So, a good performance from both teams.
Hello and welcome to First Sports. My name is Pratik Spinod. Let's get started. On the show today, Pakistan has stooped to a new low. Instead of focusing on fixing their cricket, the country is milking the handshake row from the India clash at the Asia Cup. Despite being